You have now got the knowledge about personal branding, about your personal profile and how to optimize it. Now let's talk about the content creation, which is a very natural next step when we're talking about a strong personal brand and a person who wants to be known in a specific industry. Content creation is something that naturally comes as a next step and naturally something that you have to do if you want to be noticed, if you want to be recognized. So, first of all, what are the main struggles when we're talking about content creation? One is time management. Then we have idea generation and we have self motivation and imposter syndrome. So, with time management, a couple of advice from my side is that what really helps is to actually put in a time slot in your calendar and treat this as work, because else it's very difficult to find time, right? You need to make time for this. And some people do it throughout the week. Some people, like myself, for example, I like to use Sunday evenings to prepare my content for the upcoming week. So try to see which strategy works best for you. But again, if you are not going to be serious about this, if you're not going to put it in your calendar, it will be difficult to find time because it will always be something you will push away, right, from your daily tasks and daily things. When it comes to idea generations, I have a couple of strategies that I'll be sharing in the following slides, so stay tuned. And then when it comes to self-motivation and imposter syndrome, again, you have to understand and really talk with yourself about what is the reason why you're doing this, right? I remember when I myself started, when some other people started, some clients, some team members started posting on LinkedIn, there were some people from our close circles who were not really, encouraging and allowing themselves to write or say some specific comments, which were not always nice. But at the end of the day, if you know that you're not creating this content for your friends or for your family members, if you're creating this content for people within your industry, for other professionals, for somebody who's maybe on the other side of the world and is following you and wanting to read more of your posts, then you have a different look at it, right? And again, people can be mean, and especially like people from your close circle. But once people see that you're serious and you're dedicated and consistent, they will become followers instead of haters. And with the imposter syndrome, there's no other way than just to start and kind of force yourself to make that very first post and the second and the third until it all becomes a habit. Because when it becomes a habit, just like with anything else, like exercising, it's easy, it comes naturally. So the same here, like you have to make sure that content creation becomes your weekly habit and something that you do to help yourself grow and go ahead and reach those goals that you want to reach. When we talk about content creation, the very first thing that I want to address is, of course, the structure of your post. There are various ways, and we have an amazing ebook for copywriting with all the hooks and all the ways how you can start your post. So I won't be deep diving into that because there's material ready for you already. But when we're talking about a post, there are some specific points that have to be in the post. So one thing is you have to have an advice, story, or material or something you want to share. That's the first step, right? So in this case, as in the example, we had a great event and that's our event, that's our story that we want to share. The next thing is you want to make sure that you have something to talk about, something that you have learned, or you can give your advice or opinion, right? At the end of the day, people don't really care as much about that you were somewhere or that you're sharing something as much as they care about your own thoughts and your own take on it. So it's very important that you're not only writing about something that happened or something you want to share, but you're also mentioning what's your take on it. And then finally, tagging companies and personal profiles that have something to do with it. So again, in this example, like for example, thanking others for the event and whatnot, right? So this is important for your engagement, and that it will boost your post in general. So this is a simple structure. It doesn't have to look like this, but these are some of the components that you should have in your post. And the very secret formula, which is not so secret anymore, is if you want to have a great post, like these are some of the things you have to pay attention to. So for example, authenticity, right? Your post is not a post that you copied from somebody else. Your post is unique, is authentic, and that's like the very first thing that you have to think about. You're not copying somebody's content. It gives value to your readers, to people who spend time on reading it. You're tagging people who are connected with your post. The structure is very good and easy to understand. So it's not just like one paragraph, but there's like smaller ones to help people read it through, like skim read faster. And then once in a while, you have a question. Not always, not in every single post, but like once in a while, it's all right to try to engage your audience. And if you have a piece of content which is already like amazing in itself, probably a viral piece, then none of this matter. None of these points here in this slide really matter. But for 90% of our posts which are not viral, these are some of the things to think about. So here is an example how this formula works or looks in action. First of all, this post that I made was authentic, so I made it myself, did not copy, it was original. I tagged the author and the source of this article that I read, and the value was that, I read something on Harvard Business Review, and then I talked about it and I shared those facts, and I discussed about those facts that I found out. I also shared my own opinion here, and the structure was very easy to read. Like you see a lot of smaller paragraphs, shorter sentences, and then at the end I had a simple question, thoughts, right? So this is how it looks in action. And again, there's various ways how you can structure your posts, but these are some of the points that are important for every single content creator. When it comes to tactics, when it comes to, best practices, there are a few things you should know. So first of all, the most active days are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but it doesn't mean that if you post on a Monday or on Friday or during the weekend, people won't read your posts and they won't get a lot of impressions. Sometimes the opposite happens, but the most active days are these. And when it comes to time, the best time is actually to post in the morning, because then your post has a full day to perform and be visible to your audience. Sometimes people post in the evening and they won't get that much engagement as if, for example, they would have posted the same post in the morning. So morning time, during lunch break, or at the end of the working day. When it comes to frequency, it really depends on your goals. So if you want to stay active, you can post one time per week. You can also comment a lot and not post at all. That also helps. If you want to create a strong brand, 2-3 times per week is needed. And if you want to really boost your engagement and become like a person whose profile is like a go-to place for something, for like the latest news, then 3-4 times per week is something you can go for. We have also did some research with our audiences. And again, as you can see here in the first example, I asked people how much time do they spend on LinkedIn on the weekend, and more than 50% of those almost 800 votes actually said that they spend up to 1 hour on LinkedIn on the weekend, which is quite a lot. So again, don't be discouraged not to post during the weekend. Then we also had like other around 30% of people saying 2 to 4 hours, and then some like 6% saying 5 and more, and 13% saying no LinkedIn on the weekend. The funny thing was that this whole questionnaire, this whole poll was made during the weekend, so there's 13% of these people did not want to accept that they were on LinkedIn on the weekend. But again, you can see that people are hanging out on LinkedIn during the weekends. And when I asked them, when do you scroll on LinkedIn? Again, 50% said morning, so I'm up to date, which is again why we're recommending like morning times for posting. 12% at lunchtime, and 39% evening when I finish work. So sometimes evening posts do well too, but not as often as the ones we post in the morning. And here are 3 more facts that I want you to know. So first of all, around 70% of decision makers research during their workday, meaning they're active on LinkedIn during the workday, right? They're researching. So if you're posting, if you're messaging, that's like a really good, there's a good chance that they will see it. More than 70% of decision makers research during the evening. So again, your post can do really well during the day and still get the exposure in the evening. And then around 50% of decision makers research during the weekends. So don't be discouraged. Again, try and experiment and try making at least one post during the weekend to see how it performs.
When we're talking about content creation, of course, one of the most important things to address is content types. So, a lot of the times when I'm talking with content creators, they often say that they start with text or video format or image format, but there are many more content types that you can utilize to make sure that you make your content interesting and you keep your audience on their toes. So first of all, of course, we have text, a content type, which is one of the most popular formats, and it's simply just writing a piece of content and just simply using text as your content type. Then we also have repost and repost with thoughts. So what's the difference between a repost and a repost with thoughts? The difference is that when you're reposting something and you're simply clicking to repost, it means that all the impressions, all the likes, all the comments, they will appear under the original post. It won't be your own original post. It will be like a repost where you're redirecting all the audience, all the viewers towards the original post, and you're helping the author get more views. Now, when you're reposting with thoughts, it means that basically you're creating like your own original organic content. Well, I wouldn't say it's original, but it will appear as an organic post, meaning that you can add your own text, you can add your own comment, you can add your own hashtags, and then underneath all of that, there will be the post that you're resharing. And all the impressions, views, likes, comments, they all will come to your post and won't be redirected towards the original one. So this is the difference, and these are 3 different types that you can definitely explore. We also have documents. So when it comes to documents, it's important to remember that it's a PDF format file that you can upload to your LinkedIn post, and people can scroll through it, look at it as a presentation. It's very popular, especially because people are scrolling on their mobile devices. So when they see a document post, they can swipe to the side, which is something that we all do on different social medias. And then another thing about documents is that people can download them. So and that's if you want people to have your ebook or to have your report, they can download it directly and you can have your contact information at the end of it. We also have video format content types, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? You just upload a video. Usually, I wouldn't say that the best format is to upload a long form video. It really depends on what you're trying to say, but remember that the attention span is very short these days, so I would try to keep it short. We also have picture and text, which is, I believe, one of the most popular content types. There are also LinkedIn Lives. So if you want to do a live video stream, you can do that on LinkedIn too. All you need to do is get a license or a free trial with one of the third party tools approved by LinkedIn, and you can connect your account, and that's about it. Then there are also audio events. Now, these are hosted directly on the platform. You don't have to get any third party tools. And the good thing is that you don't have to do much preparation because this is just an audio event where people are listening in, and you don't have to do any, camera recordings. You don't have to prepare all the lights and all the surroundings. You can just sit back and just talk about the things that you care about, and also invite other people. Uh, if you're participating at an audio event, if you're listening in, you can also ask a question yourself. So there are all of these opportunities. And then we have events. So if you have an event that you're organizing offline, you can always post it on LinkedIn and people can click attend. You can also make it gated, so they have to submit their email and so forth, right? So it's another type of content that you can experiment with if you have some events happening in the real life. Outsource links is again another content type. The thing is that most people, they actually don't include a link in their post because LinkedIn doesn't really like when you redirect people from their platform to some other ones. But once in a while, it's okay to do so. If you are doing it often, I would recommend just having the URL in the comment section to avoid having like less views and less engagement. There are also LinkedIn polls. So when it comes to LinkedIn polls, just remember that the easier the question is, the shorter it is, the easier for people it is to understand it. Maybe in like the first 3 seconds, the more votes you will get. And the more generic your question is, again, the more votes you will get too. Gallery is so far the most popular and the best content type right now, because if you upload multiple pictures, it allows you to tag multiple people under different pictures. It also allows people to go through the pictures and see what you've been up to. And the more people scroll and the more people click, the more engagement you get. And so LinkedIn is kind of boosting all the gallery posts because people are just scrolling a lot and looking at the photos. So I highly recommend trying gallery posts. Also, when we're talking about content types, remember that you can write articles. So if the time comes and you feel like you have more to say than LinkedIn post allows you to write, then I would recommend going forward and writing an article. Just remember that when it comes to articles, it is a content type which is not generating views right away, but it is generating views and engagement throughout a longer period of time. One more content type is newsletters. So, just like right now, what you see on the slide, you can also have your own newsletter, whatever the topic you decide to choose. You can always check even before choosing if there are any similar ones, and you can easily generate subscribers. However, it's not as good as like other tools like Substack. It's very simple. But if you want to create that community around your brand, then newsletters is definitely something you can try out, and people can subscribe. And when they are subscribed, they get a notification on LinkedIn, and they also get your newsletter sent to their email. When we're talking about content creation, it is also important to know that sometimes we all struggle with ideas, with knowing where to start, and also how to create content when you're feeling stuck. So, these are a few content creation strategies that I wanted to share with you. And recommend you, and maybe and hopefully this will help you out the next time you are struggling with content creation. So let's go and let's check all of these strategies one by one. First example, first strategy is called repurposing. So in this case, what you see here is that we had a blog. Out of that blog, we got an idea to actually create an audio event. We did that. We shared, all of us, some of us in the team, we shared the event on our personal profiles, which allowed us to have a piece of content going out. And then after the audio event, we also made another blog post, right? So we reused all the information that was mentioned in the audio event and made another blog post. So what I'm trying to show you is that sometimes you don't have to try create something new. You can repurpose what you've already made, maybe half a year ago, maybe even longer ago, and or you can actually look what the organization is doing where you're working at and see what you can repurpose yourself and what are the things that you can share, right? So if you're creating, let's say, a blog, you can always, out of that blog, make like a couple of small posts. Or for example, if you are making every single week one post with one tip, after like a month or more, you can create a long piece of content, an article with all of the tips in one place, right? So try to repurpose, try to recycle. This is a term that's not only being used in the real world, but also in marketing, because I feel like people often struggle with just creating from the scratch. So try to see always what is out there that you can use to basically start somewhere and have an idea instead of starting with a blank page. Another technique is called copy technique, and this one is a very simple one. So basically, when you're starting out and you don't have a lot of followers yet, one thing you can do is you can find people in your industry who inspire you, and then basically try and see what are the best content types and content pieces that they have made in the recent months that generated a lot of engagement. So when I was analyzing Stephen Bartlett, I could see that a lot of the posts that were successful had his face in a video format. Then also there were document posts which were very informative. There were also posts which were relevant to the specific thing happening at that time or specific news. And then finally, he had a lot of easy and short posts where people could quickly understand like a few tips or a learning that he had, and that really worked for him. So what I can do in this case, if I'm just starting out and I don't really know what works, I can see these different patterns, these different trends that he is making and that work for people, and I can try to copy the technique and make sure that people, for example, see some content which is easy and like super short. I can try out putting out some documents which are super informative and so forth, right? So not copying the content itself, but copying the technique. Another example is strong visuals. So if you, for example, are working at a company which is known and there's like a recognizable branding, you can also start posting some posts which are branded with that company's branding and elements, because if people are connecting with the brand itself, they will immediately engage, they will like it, and you will get more engagement right away. So if you're working at a company which has that connection, that strong connection with everybody, a big audience, you can try to leverage that for yourself too. Another thing to remember is that when you're creating content, remember that people that gain followers and have big audiences, they are also a place of news for that industry professionals. So if you want to be followed more, if you want to have like more engagement, remember to talk about what's new in the industry, different trends, and then help out and educate your fellow professionals from the same industry to make sure that you establish that professional image and professional relationship. So remember that when you're creating content, you also want to make sure that people come to your profile because they know that you're actually posting a lot about the latest things in the industry. And one of the final examples here is Quora. So maybe some of you are aware of it, maybe some of you are not, but Quora is often used for all kinds of questions, and people are answering to those questions and leaving their answers, and then the best answers gets upvoted. So this is what Quora is used for. And when you're struggling with ideas and when you're not sure what to write about, you can go to Quora. You can write, for example, in this case, gaming industry, right? And you can see either all types of, or you can click on questions, and you can actually see what are the most asked, top voted questions that people ask within that industry. And what you can do with that information is that you can actually take it and write a content piece answering to one or two questions. And I mean, if like 200 people had that question, I guess more people have it, right? So finding already existing questions that people have about your niche, about your industry, will help you to understand what kind of content is needed and would come as educational for them. At the end of the day, when we're talking about what you could write about, it's important to understand like there's no one formula. And when we're writing, we can write about professional experiences, we can write about book recommendations, industry news, personal stories, current employer, colleagues, projects, and results. Like there's a bunch of different topics that you can write about. But at the end of the day, it's always the personal stories and various kind of results and numbers that really grab people's attention. So at the end of the day, you can write about anything. You can even write about your hobbies and, whether you ran a marathon, and you can write about how that was like teaching you and strengthening your willpower. So it's all about the perspective. And again, sharing something which is not generic, but rather is a little piece of you, a little story about how your professional life is looking like, or what are some of the experiences that you have encountered. Here are a few examples. So again, looking at what is really trendy or what people write about, it's events, it's theme, sharing some personal stories plus adding a few tips at the end of it. There's also engaging with audience through polls. So we talked about it. Statistics, right? Something a lot of people love to see. We also have company news, people writing about different trends, people sharing their knowledge in a document format. So you can see a lot of it is like repeating, but still it means that it is working. And finally, here are a few people that you can get inspired by. So definitely check out their profiles, see what kind of content they're producing and how they're building their audience. I bet there's lots of more people to get inspired by, but these are a few that I would recommend. And then again, always try to find people from your industry who are already in a place where you would like to be in the future. Here is an example from the day when we coached an IT company in Denmark, where we actually took 5 people and 5 people who were not really posting a lot, and we coached them and they made their own original storytelling posts with different stories, but kind of in a way still connected to the company that they work at. And in that one day, they generated 13,000 views with their own original content pieces. So this is again another example why we need to create content, why we're talking about it. It's because it is, in a way, when you master it, it is beneficial for you and it is very beneficial for the company that you represent. Remember that everybody's journey is different. So when you begin writing content, it's important that you stay consistent. And after a while, whether that's like 2, 3, 4 months, you'll start seeing first results. So until then, what you gotta do is you gotta stay consistent and stay motivated, and maybe get like an accountability buddy to help you out with staying consistent. But at the end of the day, it is all worth it, because after a while it picks up and the audience starts to grow. And this is an example of how a person began their story. And then this is after a year, over 1 million views in impressions. So again, every journey is different. It's just important to stick with what you want to achieve and be motivated and consistent.